You're sitting in the lounge of the dimly lit inn. You feel warm and relaxed as the open fire crackles and the flames dance around, creating moving shadows on the walls. You sip on a nice pint of English ale. You feel a cool draft and the hairs on your arms and the back of your neck rise. As you look towards the passageway, a soldier from yesteryear walks towards you. For a brief moment you are in shock, scared for your life, but then he's gone. He's disappeared right in front of you. The calmness of the old inn is back. You feel the warmth from the fireplace, and relax again, you are safe. You've just seen one of the many ghosts that haunt Ye Olde Black Cross in Bromsgrove in Worcestershire. Welcome to Ghost Tales by the Fireside. I am Clem Dalloway, and I'll be taking a step back in time to tell you the history and ghost tales of the 400-year-old Ye Olde Black Cross, with tales of murder, hangings, and a visit from a king. Bromsgrove was first documented in an Anglo-Saxon document as Bromsgrove, and is mentioned in the Domesday Book as Bromsgrove, meaning Breamy's Grove, the grove referring to a woodland economy. The town was granted a market day in 1200, and in 1317 was given the right to hold a market every Tuesday, which still continues today. In the late Middle Ages, Bromsgrove was a central part of the wool trade, perhaps because much of the land was used by the Cistercian monks of Bawdsley Abbey in nearby Redditch, who were well known as wool traders. By the 18th century, the town became a well-known place for nail making. The nail makers lived in slum conditions in small cottages with their work sheds attached to them. Ye Olde Black Cross was originally a one-up, one-down cottage, built in 1640 as a blacksmith's cottage. In the year 1651, the blacksmith of the cottage was visited by Jane Lane, sister of the royalist colonel John Lane of Bentley Hall, accompanied by a servant whose horse had lost a shoe and needed to be shod before the journey carried on. They were travelling to Abbotsleigh in Somerset to see a friend who was pregnant. This was at a turbulent time in English history, as it was during the end of the English Civil War. King Charles II and his 16,000-strong army went into battle and was extremely outnumbered by the 32,000-strong army led by Oliver Cromwell at the Battle of Worcester. Charles was defeated and fled the battle, trying to cross the country to make an escape to France. As he was being hunted by Cromwell and his men, Charles disguised himself as the servant of Jane Lane, who helped him travel unnoticed past Bristol, where he could pay for a ship to take him to France. This perilous journey took 6 weeks. At a later date, when Charles retold the story to Samuel Pepys, who kept a diary for 10 years, documenting the life in the 17th century, he wrote, "As I was holding my horse's foot, I asked the smith, 'What news?' He told me that there was no news of the beating of the rogues of the Scots. I asked him, there was none of the English taken that joined with the Scots. He answered, he had not hear if that rogue, Charles Stuart, were taken, but some of the others, he said, were taken. I told him that if that rogue were taken, he deserved to be hanged, more than all the rest, for bringing in the Scots. Upon which he said, I spoke like an honest man, and so we parted." Charles escaped to France, and after Oliver Cromwell's death in 1658, regained the throne on the 29th of May, 1660, Charles Stuart's 30th birthday. It is not known when the cottage became an inn, and the origin of its name is a mystery. Some people believe that it may be something to do with an iron cross that may have been made by the blacksmith, or it could be something to do with the building standing on a crossroads. It has also been speculated that the name originates from an organisation such as the Knights Templar, as they use a black cross as an emblem, and they held and still hold much land across Worcestershire. Local people believe it gained its name from the use of a gibbet that was used to display bodies of criminals that had been hung before being buried in unconsecrated ground on the crossroads next to where the inn is built. It is believed that the inn's cellar was used to hold criminals sentenced to death, and they were hung at the back of the inn, which is now the beer garden and lounge area. There is a well in the bar area, which is now covered up. Paranormal researchers have claimed to have picked up much activity in this area. Looking at the exterior of the inn, you can see that it used to be more than one building. What is now the kitchen area of the inn was once a Victorian house, which was bought and added to the existing building. The house is reputed to have been the site of the murder of a young girl in the 19th century. The bin lid in the kitchen is moved often, and other poltergeist activity occurs, such as objects being thrown around and things disappear for weeks, then turn up in unusual places. The young girl has mostly been sighted around the kitchen area. One summer afternoon, a family visited the inn for a meal. After ordering and waiting for their meals, their young daughter went to the toilet. After a few minutes, she came running back, crying, telling her parents that another little girl had pushed her over while in the toilet area. After the parents complained to the staff, they went to investigate, and there was no one there. In fact, there were no other children on the premises. One afternoon, a member of staff came from the toilet area. As she entered the passageway that leads to the lounge, she ran out in fear. She said that she'd seen a ghost. She said that he was stood still and described him as a soldier from the past wearing a long cloak and a wide-brimmed hat. Another member of staff stayed over one night in one of the guest rooms. The next morning, he told the landlord that he wouldn't be staying there again. He said that a figure appeared and walked through the door. He described the figure as wearing the same clothes as what the other member of staff had described. The inn has 2 guest rooms, and room number 2 has a reputation for people not wanting to stay in that room again once they've stayed there. A guest stayed over for one night in room 2. Throughout the night he was disturbed many times with various tapping sounds and loud bangs that seemed to be coming from different parts of the room. He put it down to being an old building, and that it was just settling down due to temperature changes through the night. He finally settled and fell asleep when he was suddenly woken up again with a loud bang. He looked across the room to where the noise had came from and witnessed a hooded figure that walked across the room and went straight through one of the other walls. Residents of the inn have also experienced many strange happenings in the flat above the bar, which is part of the original blacksmith's cottage. The landlord's wife was ill in bed. He was working the bar when he heard a loud bang coming from the room that she was in above the bar. He rushed upstairs thinking that his wife had fallen out of bed. He arrived to the room and she was sat up in bed reading a book. When he asked her if she was okay, she told him that she'd been in bed all evening and hadn't moved at all, but she did hear footsteps a few times in the corridor. No one had been upstairs at all that evening. Another landlord, at a later time, was living in the flat with his partner. When they first moved in, there was no lock on the flat door. One morning when he was in the shower and his partner was still in bed, she heard footsteps that sounded like someone was walking up the stairs and towards the bedroom. The door latch lifted and the door opened. She waited and no one entered the room. Later that day they bought and fitted a lock on the door, but the latch would still be lifted many more times. A previous landlady experienced a lot of disturbances at various times. She was getting ready for work one night when a little boy walked into the flat. She spoke to him and he disappeared. One day, only 2 customers were in. They loved music, so she turned the jukebox up louder than usual. When they heard a voice shout, "Turn it off!" A woman and her young son would come into the pub a few times a week for lunch. The boy would always ask if he could talk to the man in the corner, but there was never anybody there. If you would like to find out more about Ye Olde Black Cross in Bromsgrove, log on to the Facebook page, facebook.com/Ghost Tales Podcast, where you'll find a few links. You can also find us on Instagram, instagram.com/Ghost Tales Podcast. This podcast will be out monthly and is available on most podcast platforms. All music, research, writing, production, art and sound effects are all my own work.